Hey everybody, thanks for checking out this week's episode of My First Sketch at myfirstsketch.com. I'm Josh Hyam. As always, you can subscribe to the show on iTunes or on SoundCloud and get it automatically. If you use the Stitcher app, it's listed there as well. It should be up on YouTube in a couple days when I remember to get around to doing that. You can like the podcast on Facebook at facebook.com/myfirstsketch. My email is josh@myfirstsketch.com. And you can follow me on Twitter at myfirstsketch. Some personal plugs to begin the show. First, I will be part of a team performing together for the first time in the next Sync or Sketch on September 7th, 9 p.m. at FIT. And then the following Thursday, September 14th, I'll be doing a monologue at Drew Cramshack's Monologues show. So, there are 2 chances for you to see me trying to be funny in the next few weeks. And then the big show, Philly Sketchfringe. 3 shows on September 15th, 7, 8:30, 10:30 at the Comedy Sports Theater, the Playground of the Adrian, whatever you want to call it. Tickets are available at myfirstsketch.com/sketchfringe. Over the next few weeks, I'll be spotlighting a few of the interesting shows taking place during Philadelphia Fringe Festival. And first up is Tara Demmy, currently a member of Pedi and the theater company Tribe of Fools. As Tribe of Fools presents Fishtown, a hipster noir, we look back to her first sketch called the STI Rap. Tara does the rap, and I jump in on the choruses as the hype man of sorts. So let's get to it.
Michael Kimberly chillin' at a party, flirtin', lurkin', messin', testin'. The Waters, doing what the kids do best. Oh, who invited gonorrhea? See ya, I'm outie, hanging all over ya. Mikey and Kimmy, watch out, too late. Frothy white discharge is your fate. 7 minutes of heaven, more like 7 years of antiviral meds. Oh! It burns when she pees and he doesn't know why. It burns when she pees and she thinks she knows why.
It's an STI, mother effer.
STI, STD, why me? Can't you see Brian had a fun date with a chick named Stephanie, fell in love at Wendy's. That night he wanted a doggy missionary mambo, should have stopped with the fries and cheeseburger because he got stuck with a crab's genital warts combo. Brian's standing alone at this party, scratching, itching, thinking about Stephanie. Says he's taking off work for a vacation. More like daily ablation? Ablation? Google that shit. It burns when he pees and he doesn't know why. It burns when she pees and she's pretty sure she knows why.
It's an STI, mother effer.
Hey, Jim, I know that's not a pimple, a dimple. Oh, it can't be that simple. Don't tell me your mouth is just stained from a Slurpee when I know you're best friends with a virus named herpes. Night's almost over, but there's still time for some human papilloma. Oh, so sublime. Not the band, the feeling. You'll wake up tomorrow with anal warts and realize you weren't dreaming. It burns when he pees and he doesn't know why. It burns when she pees and she knows exactly why.
It's an STI, mother effer.
I'm leaving. No goodie bag for me. Party is over. I have protection. No need for an abstinence lesson. I'm asexual. I read books and whittle. And if there's a really no lonely night, I just grab a pickle. Tickle, tickle. Kids, call your parents before it's too late. Doctor's office is a callin'. STI treatment, set the date.
It's an STI, mother effer. Hey, Tara.
Hi.
All right, so where does this come from? This is just bonkers to me.
It's like too specific, right? It gets a little bit too medical at times, and so it's not fun.
It feels like a guidance counselor trying to be hip, like at a high school assembly. Like, it just totally feels that's what you're going for in this.
Definitely, although I probably wrote it trying to be really cool. I wrote it like 7 years ago, and it was around that time where it's like it's not STDs anymore, it's STIs.
Right.
Get it right. And I was like, oh, okay. And I was with my mom in a car in a long car ride, and I had the chorus, "It burns when he pees and he doesn't know why." I had that pretty much set, and my mother's a nurse, so I asked her some details. Like, ablation is like when they actually burn off.
Theoretically, this is like medically accurate.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
To an extent. Just
to an extent, yeah. I did my research for this. Yeah, and I don't know. I always imagined it would be a really cool 90s video.
Your Google search history must have been awful, like that week of just like whatever awfulness you saw. And was this ever performed?
No, it was never done. I had a sketch group in college called, I was in one called Tour Guides Wanted.
Okay.
In college, and I kept pitching it to them. And it was just like always my pitch, and then it never.
Hey guys, I still have that STI rap. Come on, let's do it.
Have it in my back pocket whenever you're ready.
We have 3 minutes left in the show. We'll just do it. It's okay.
And yeah, so I always thought it would be filmed, and it would be some like 90s kid part, like
I can see the stylized version that you're like. I can totally see it.
Yeah. And it would be, it's sort of educational. Yeah, it's almost too educational.
You mentioned you did sketch in college. Where was this?
Denison University. And it was with a few people that I was on an improv troupe with. Burpee City Theatrical Company. That is technically one of the oldest college improv groups in the world.
Okay.
In the world? Probably not. I'm going to say in the United States.
I mean,
I'm going to just say Ohio.
Okay.
Take it down.
Just
in
the world. You know what?
No,
just go Ohio.
It's the Steve Carell was on it, so that's we're funny because Steve Carell founded this.
Right, like we have to be good because he was a part of it at one point. Like,
yeah.
I'm always jealous of people that had sketch and improv experiences in college. Like, I really wish I did. Or, like, even some people were like, yeah, I did this in high school. I was like, what are you doing in high school? What, like, how did you... it just bothers me that some people start so much younger than I did. When I
know. Yeah. I was on a house team at Philly Improv Theater, and this brilliant woman named Addie, she was like 17, and she'd already completed like UCB classes. She's brilliant. She's in New York. She's going to be famous at some point. But yeah, I was like, I haven't even completed. Wait, who am I? I'm like almost 30.
What am I doing in my life?
Yeah, these kids are in high school. They're like, I've already written a million sketches, and I have a very refined comedic voice.
Yeah, whenever I talk to anyone from Temple Smash, there's a part of me that's just like, I hate you. Like,
they're so good.
I wish I had this at one point in my life. What was your comedy fandom growing up? What were you into? What were you watching? What made you laugh?
Oh, I don't know. Growing up, I watched a lot of Adam Sandler movies. Mm-hmm. It's like Happy Gilmore, Billy Madison were like my go-to. But I would say as much as I liked comedy, I didn't get into it until college as like a thing.
Okay, so then what turned you on in college?
Making this improv troupe. They're like auditions.
So then what was
in theater. I was mostly a theater kid.
So for you being, I'm assuming a theater student, theater major, that improv troupe became just another muscle to flex. Like, it wasn't like, okay, let's try this. Like you didn't see Whose Line Is It Anyway on TV and be like, I have to do this. I have to find this. Yeah,
I saw Whose Line, but in high school, I wouldn't say I was funny at all. I was like, oh, she's sort of quiet and nice.
Okay.
And I think I had a twin brother who was very much like the class clown. And that might have been like part of it where I was like, I'm not the funny one. Or I don't know. Or it's like, oh, theater is actually something I can study. So I was like, and I actually think a lot about this theater versus comedy because I do both. And there's something about theater where it's like, oh, it's an academic field of study and comedy isn't yet. But I actually think comedy for me, I found it in college and it all sort of clicked. And then I was like, this is an art form that I actually want to study and pursue. And it wasn't really until after college that I like jumped in with both feet and actually started to like watch stand-up and watch sketch and improv.
Did you have a favorite role in as you were studying theater that you did?
Yeah, I was in college. My favorite role, I was in Ubu the King or Ubu Bois by Alfred Jarry, which is this absurdist.
As I say, this is not a thing I've ever heard.
No, it's definitely not like Tennessee Williams, but it's like it's an absurdist play that actually would have a lot of interesting overlaps if done today, considering like our president. But yeah, it's basically about a corrupt king.
Okay.
And it's super absurdist, and I had like clown makeup on, and the whole play was like this big food fight.
Okay.
And that was just an adaptation. That was just for that production.
Like an actual like food. Like
yeah,
you
like
are
food,
actually flinging food at each other.
Yes. So like it was just we were in these Tyvek suits and we were like throwing food, and it's very physical. It's the performers almost appear like marionettes. They're like puppets like that. So that's when I first got into like physical comedy in sort of an absurdist way. So I've always been interested in where comedy and theater intersect. Yeah.
Okay, so you're doing theater in college. You join improv troupe. You do a little sketch in college. After you graduate, what's your experience coming out and doing other stuff elsewhere? Like,
well, I moved to Philly almost immediately after, and then jumped into improv classes at Philly Improv
just went
Theater.
straight to
yeah.
Okay, so let's go through the curriculum. Who Improv 101? Who was your teacher?
I skipped 101. It was at a time. It was at a time when like
it was like you got that waiver of like, hey,
Yeah.
I've done this before. So okay.
It was sort of. It was at a time at Philly Improv Theater where it's like there was like a few classes a session.
Sure.
Like we were just very small. This was 6 years ago. So yeah, I needed the 201 fit with my schedule, and I had done a lot of improv prior. So
Okay.
I only did 201 and 401
So 201.
Very weird.
You completely skipped. All right. Who was your 201 teacher? Who was the
Amy Rowe.
And then the 401.
Greg Mon.
Okay. How did you skip 3? Like, I can understand skipping 1. How do you skip? Like, I don't get that part. That's weird to me.
It is weird.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. What happened? Out of 201, I was cast on a house team in Philly, and so at that point, then I was on it for a year or so. It was Hey Rube. It was a very early house team. And then at that point, company members, you're like, oh, you can take classes. And where it was, it just made sense for me to go right to 401.
Okay.
So yeah, I didn't quite actually go through the curriculum, but the curriculum has changed so much not tons at FIT, but 401 wasn't even the Herald. It was like special forms.
Right.
So monoscene, blah, blah. Now 401's the Herald. So technically and then I did UCB training, but like before that, I hadn't actually had a Herald class.
Okay.
I was like, what?
So let's go through the UCB. Who are your instructors at UCB?
Oh, gosh. A guy named Gavin.
Okay.
And then a woman named Molly Lloyd, who I loved. You remember the full names of teachers you love. That's a fact.
And the people you don't like, you're like, oh,
You're
it's just Gavin.
And yeah, I don't remember. It was hard. I haven't taken 401 there, but my 301, I love UCB, but my teacher was recommended, and it was supposedly like very good, and he didn't show up for half the classes.
So
the thing is, I really think UCB. I loved my 201 teacher, and I felt like I got game the philosophy of the Herald, and I was like, I'll finish it. I'll go to 401 if I ever move to New York and like want to perform there.
Okay.
So I didn't finish it, but I will someday.
Someday, it's fine.
Yeah.
There's no rush.
But I'm bad. I should remember. I'm a teacher. I should remember my teachers' names.
Okay, so you get cast on Hey Rube here in the city, and like. I didn't see much since I've gotten involved in the comedy community. I haven't seen much improv. Like, I just know general names of like. So who was on Hey Rube, or who was the director? Who were some of your teammates? Like,
Matt Holmes was the director. And
Okay.
He does Matt and
Rare Bird Show back in the day.
Oh, Rare Bird. I haven't heard Rare Bird Show in years.
Yeah.
I know. I'm like thinking. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like 7 years ago. This is fun. I'm like, I need my resume. people who are on Hey Rube, I'll say Lizzie Spellman was on Hey Rube, and
Okay.
I am on a new house team at Fit with her now.
Great,
which
you
is
just got
really
cast
nice.
on one of the new ones.
Yes.
Yay,
So
congratulations.
thank you. And so I'm really excited to work with Lizzie again. And Lizzie also does theater, so it's very fun to work with her. Who else? A lot of older Dennis Traffney, Jen Curcio, a bunch of people were on Hey Rube. Aaron Herzog, Rob Cutler. There was a mix of a lot of, like, we had a few stand-ups, a few theater people. Like, it was a hodgepodge.
Right.
And I always call Hey Rube like a pretty angry team, full of hate. Not full of hate, but we were definitely like a darker team in terms of our comedy and just our energy.
And then how do you get into sketch in the city? Like, what's your first?
My sketch in the city, honestly, is Pedi was getting some new people, and they asked me.
Okay. Pedi starts in early 2012, late 2011. And Pedi to me, I always have to remember what the generations are. Like, first generation is Madonna, Breonna Kelly, Kate Thompson, Aubrey Williams, and Shannon Brown. They're the first five.
Yes.
Where do you come in? Like,
after a lot of them had left, except Aubrey. So it was
because I know at certain points, Jess Ross comes onto the fold.
I was added after.
Jackie Baker does it for a bit. I think Kate Banford was there for a while.
That I came on with them. So once Kate and Jess had moved to LA, that was when the team was like, okay, we need some new people. Considering Aubrey Williams, we need some new. But Caitlin Weigel was already part of it then, and Corinne Wells. So they were sort of a cohort, and then they brought on a large group. And the same thing that we were discussing earlier about, like, a good sketch team is a team that has a similar schedule.
Yeah. It's job one to me anymore.
Yeah, exactly. So we had a whole bunch of people join, and then trickled off within the next couple
Because I
months.
want to say Molly Silverman was involved for a little.
Right.
Like,
Karen's Dream was like a show that it was like 7 Pedi.
Yeah.
It was just a really large group, and after that point we just couldn't, like, schedules, other commitments, and now we're down to 4. So it's Caitlin Weigel, Corinne Wells, who's in New York,
right.
Aubrey Williams, and me.
Right.
And we did Women in Comedy Festival last year, and then when we did a show at Villanova University. So we did some out-of-town-ish shows. But we're hoping to do a new show coming up in November.
Yeah, because there was
It's been a while.
A retrospective, like, last year, wasn't there? Like, around Christmas time, a bunch of people came back to the city.
Oh, yeah.
Like, the New York and LA people returned and did a little, hey, 5 years of Pedi. Like, I missed that. I forget why I missed
that too. I was out of town. And
Yeah.
I don't think Corinne or Caitlin, I don't think they were able to meet. So all the current
So
members,
it was.
I think Aubrey was there.
Right.
Because Aubrey
she's
is the best.
She's the
mother
remaining
of the,
original, yeah.
Yeah. She's the best of us.
So what other theater experience do you do, like, before Tribe of Fools? Like, let's bridge the gap from college to Tribe of Fools.
Not a lot, honestly, because I got involved with theater admin. I worked at Fringe Arts for a few years, art and theater company.
Okay.
So I had if anyone who works in nonprofit theater knows that it's more than a day job. So I had a pretty hefty day job. And so I really only had time for comedy. And I did a lot of it. I was on the In Crowd for a year. I was on, like, an independent team. So I had 3 improv teams going for about a couple years. Then started getting into Pedi sketch. I went to Italy for a year to study physical theater and movement-based theater.
Okay.
So I disappeared for like a year.
Okay, we have to talk about Italy. Like,
this is so exciting.
Okay, so what? Like, why? I mean, I don't want to say, like, why Italy. I totally understand the appeal of Italy and learning.
Pasta.
But, like, what? Actually, that wouldn't be the thing for me at all. Like,
oh, so that's like my first, like.
Because I understand. So why Italy, like, over any other place, any other excursion you could have done?
Well, I fell in love with a theater practitioner who's named Jacques Lecoq, and he's a movement. He's no longer alive, but he came up with this whole pedagogy of movement-based theater based out of play and improv, actually. The whole conceit is that you improvise something and then you try to make it into something permanent. But how do you retain the play of improv? Similar to like what's sort of sexy right now is improv to sketch. Works the same way. So it's this theater practitioner, red-nosed clown,
Right.
a lot of mask work. Have you ever heard of neutral mask? There's all these terms that come out of this guy in France in the 70s, 80s that sort of made this whole, earlier than that. I think he was probably creating it much earlier than that, but it was very big at that time. So I wanted the Lecoq training. There's a Lecoq school in Paris. There's one in Blue Lake, California, Del Arte. So Pig Iron is also Lecoq-based training.
I think I walked
their
by,
school.
I think when I went to, is that the Del Arte one? Is that in like LA?
No, it's in Blue Lake.
Okay.
Although there is a practitioner, Paula Coletto, in LA now.
I was wandering
Teacher.
around LA like last fall, and like I just passed something. I was like, "This is like, what is this?" Like, it was like a much fancier term like for theater. I can't remember what it is now, but like, I was waiting for a show to start at the Groundlings, and I was just wandering around that neighborhood, and there was something. And
There is definitely
I'm
there's
sure,
a school
yeah.
up there now. It was in Chicago, but now she's there. This brilliant woman. So yeah, there's schools popping up that that train in this style, and I knew I wanted that training, and so I was doing all this admin work, working tons of jobs, and I was sort of saving for this school, and I didn't know where it would be. I was also, there's LISPA, I thought I really wanted it to be abroad, and then Giovanni Fusetti, who's like my mentor and one of my teachers, had the school in Italy.
okay,
And just from reading his scholarship, and he was a teacher at the Lecoq School. He was actually a teacher of the people who founded Pig Iron, a couple of those people. I was just like, oh, this is it. And I went to Italy for a year to study for intensive study in this type of theater. It was 2013-14. I needed a change. I was it was right after the Fringe Festival. I was working long days, and I was so heavily in admin, and I loved the comedy, but I knew I wanted this, and so I spent all my money.
and you just flew to Italy for
And
a
I had
year.
a brilliant year.
Wow.
I ate pasta every day. There was not a day.
Again, that's not the draw to Italy
I
for
mean-
me. I don't like. I might be the one person in the world that's not a huge fan of pasta, or like, unless you are like a celiac or whatever. Like,
Do you like pork?
yeah, I can. Yeah, I mean,
Do you like meats?
I'm like,
You're like,
I'm
I don't
pretty
like
basic
food.
about like
I don't like
chicken and like, I don't know, but like, I can have a ravioli every once in a while. I couldn't do it 7 days a week. I don't think.
I mean,
Which and
go to Italy. You might be like, this is amazing.
I might convert to a pasta farian or whatever.
I love pasta. So I'm very obsessed with it, obviously. But
So you spend a year in Italy, this intensive training course movement,
yeah.
and then you come back to Philadelphia.
Yes.
What's next then?
I tried to be an actor
Like-
for like 2 years. I'd had the 6 jobs. And I did a lot of cool, interesting work. At least I think it was. And I jumped back into comedy, but I did a little bit more theater. And I actually did my first Tribe of Fools show before I went to Italy.
Okay.
And it was called Shut Your Wormhole, and it was part of PIFA, Philadelphia International Festival for the Arts. It's I don't know if they still do that at the Kimmel Center, but anyway.
I don't know.
Or they do it every other year. I don't know. Yeah. But I did a show called Shut Your Wormhole about time travel with Tribe of Fools, and that actually was that working with this theater company, and it's a physical theater company that uses improv. It was and Terry Brennan, who's the founding artistic director of Tribe of Fools, studied in Del Arte,
Okay.
which is Lecoq-based training. So that was like my final push, where I was like, I want to be doing this more. I want this training. So I came back. For at least a couple years, I did a couple Tribe of Fools shows. We did this random reality television show on True TV.
Okay.
So I worked with Tribe of Fools. I jumped back into comedy, and I purposefully didn't take a full-time job.
Okay.
I had like the 6 actor jobs.
Right.
And it was exhausting. I'm still tired.
Tell me about Tribe of Fools. Like, what is the hook of Tribe of Fools compared to other theater groups, companies? Because, like, the one thing I know about Tribe of Fools, apparently there's a more movement-based, like...
Yeah.
But I'm not a theater person, so, like, you know...
Honestly, you'll probably be able to describe it better than any theater person who tries to make it sound. Anyway, I'm always like, oh, theater people. I'm always trying to, like, make theater more accessible and not something that's like, let me use these big theater terms. So basically, I'm sure you could describe it brilliantly.
This is your chance to make it more accessible. Like.
Oh, here we go. Fixing a theater problem. What makes Tribe of Fools different? Yes, movement. But... less dance per se and more we do a lot of parkour, a lot of acrobatics, but what I think what Tribe of Fools does really what sets us apart from other physical theater and movement and circus companies is storytelling. So the movement is really integrated into the storytelling, and it's comedic. We like do really like it is funny work. There's also our shows are Philly centric, so they always take place, they're always Philly characters, and they're always usually set in a specific Philadelphia neighborhood. They're Philly themes, so it's super local, which I think is really cool. Also, I mentioned this, it's there is usually some sort of social political issue embedded into the hilarity and into the story, so there is some satire mixed in. So all those layers usually proves for a very entertaining, physically impressive show that also has characters you can connect to. And the characters are big. That's the thing with Tribe of Fools that I think sets us apart. And at first audiences are like, what? Because it's not realism like we're used to sometimes with theater where you go and that the acting is very realistic. Tribe of Fools, the characters are ramped up to like a 7 or an 8. Similar to Commedia dell'arte, I would call them like South Philly Commedia dell'arte. So there's it's almost to the point of caricature or archetypes. This exaggeration is not meant to offend, but rather to really show the humanity and insides of these people and really amplify socially or politically, whatever gender, whatever we're examining, what's going on. So we ramp up everything. So yeah, sorry, that was a long.
No, is that just an audition process when you first got into it? Like that first show that you did, the wormhole, was it Shut Your Wormhole?
Shut Your Wormhole.
Shut Your Wormhole. Okay.
It's about Jean-Claude Van Damme and time travel.
But and you just go in as an audition, like. I
was brought in because I did a reading for First Person Arts Festival, and I worked with this director, Megan Williams, who is an amazing director in town, and she founded Flashpoint Theater Company, which is no longer around, but was a very awesome company, and she did a lot of work with them. And so she was directing Shut Your Wormhole and brought me in. So she is like the reason. Megan Williams is a good friend of mine, and she's like she's the reason I do theater in this town. So at all.
Like, what other kinds of roles are you taking in your actor time? Like, is it all just Tribe of Fools?
It's a lot of, honestly, the one, Tribe of Fools, because they're devised new shows, we work on them for about 4 or 5 months.
Right.
So that's a good chunk of my year. And then if I do a Pedi show, that's another couple months. And then if I do a few other comedy things. So usually I try to do another show in some capacity. So 2 theater shows a year in comedy. That's a full year for me. But honestly, I'd be very happy just to do Tribe of Fools and then do my comedy.
So you're not like sneaking off to play like one of the stepsisters in Cinderella, or like playing like one of the more mainstream shows? Or I
mean, I audition from time to time, but I'm definitely not, I guess, a traditional actor and like doing the big audition, all the auditions and things like that.
Yeah. Like, is there a role in theater that you want to play? Like,
Ooh.
Is there something that you're dying to do at some point in your career?
I'd love to be Hedda Gabler in Ibsen's Hedda Gabler.
I don't know what that is.
She's just basically this, the play's called Hedda Gabler, and she's just like this badass lady that got married when she didn't want to.
Okay.
And she sort of just, I mean, there's tons of interpretations of this character because she's difficult to figure out. But she manipulates people around her. It's hard to know if she's a sociopath or just depressed.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she's just a very complex female character.
Okay.
So I'd love to play her.
Yeah. Like, I've heard that name, and I don't know if there's been a movie or like that's not a name that's totally foreign to me. But I don't know what the context of that character or that show is.
Right.
I know very little about theater, like outside of standard musicals and like.
Right, but that's, I mean, I keep saying, like, I think that's totally okay. And I think theater, what Tribe of Fools does a really good job is making sure it's accessible.
Mm-hmm.
And I think theater, for the most part, I'm generalizing, is too expensive. And if you read the synopsis for a show, or if you go see a show and you think the movie would have been better, then it's not the show that we need to be doing. So film, basically years and years ago when film came out, film does realism better than theater does, and yet in Europe and other places they're like, okay, theater needs to become something that has to be live. It has to be live. And I think other countries did a really good job of becoming more experimental and pushing the art form. And then in America, we're like, no, we're going to stick to realism and naturalism. And while there's magical realism and there's ways, on stage has to be something that has to be live. And if there can be if the movie would be better, then it's hard, especially because we can sit at home and watch Netflix for much cheaper than going to the theater.
Yeah, studying film a little bit in college, like there's a huge difference between going to a movie, and we say that the movie theater is expensive now. Going to live theater is 5, 6, 10 times more expensive than a movie.
Right.
Like, and I just can't imagine, like, being a sketch comedian, like doing the same role 4 times, like over a 2-week span or whatever. That's enough for me. I can't imagine doing it 8 days a week or 8 shows a week, 7 days, whatever it is. So like and then what am I trying to say? Like, what I want to say without being offensive to theater
do it.
Like, I don't understand. I do understand why it's so expensive, and you have to pay for all the upfront fees of the theater and rehearsals for a month and a half prior, and like, but there's just like, why is Broadway so expensive? Like, why the Tonys are such a cool thing, and then you go to New York and you're like, oh, this show is $190 to sit in the middle of a balcony, like.
Right, and what do I need to wear? Do I have to dress up? Oh, I have to get there early. Like, there were all these things, right? And add rain and add Netflix, and you're like, nah, I'm going to skip that.
It's so much easier to stay home. Like, a couple years ago for my birthday, I always try to do something fun on my birthday. I went to see the show once.
Oh, nice.
And I actually...
Also a movie.
Also, because I love the movie so much.
Yeah.
I was lucky enough to see, like, one of the final performances of the original cast.
Oh, wow, nice.
Which is cool enough. But there was a part of me that was like, there's very little difference here than from here to the movie. Like, I appreciate the idea of just staging it like this, and the music playing live is cool.
Right.
But the movie is charming and fantastic.
Yeah.
Like,
and I get to watch it on a couch in my pajamas.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just saying, like, this is what theater is up against.
I had to go to New York for this.
I had to go to New York and, like, wear pants that are a little too tight. I don't know.
And it was cold, and
all my nice pants are, like, a little too tight on me. I'm like, these are too tight. Yeah, it's cold. And theaters, like, well, there's discounts. But yeah, you have to wait in a Tix line, or you have to go on a certain night. It's not like a movie where I can just be like, okay, I'm going to go buy the ticket. It's $12. So it's tough. And theater still, like, theater audiences tend to be older, and audiences are dying. Yeah. So theaters are desperate. And again, I'm generalizing, podcast world. I'm generalizing, but theaters are desperate for younger audiences, trying to put bars in their lobbies. So there is a social element to it.
You have the bars and once had the bar on stage.
Okay.
At the beginning of the show, you actually could go up on stage.
Total marketing,
But at the same time, in Broadway, I think the huge trend, and it's been a trend for 20 years, and it's not stopping anytime soon, is adapting movies to the theater. And then you have to create a spectacle out of them. Like, you know, Lion King has the big puppet animatronic animals that the actors control. But like now you have Aladdin, Little Mermaid. Andrew Lloyd Webber wrote School of Rock for some reason. Like, these shows might be wonderful, but like, why are we going in this direction with theater when you're talking about theater has to be a live experience, something that you can't do on film, something that is a different, I don't know, environment and experience than what you would get sitting at home. Like, how much different is the Broadway version of School of Rock versus the movie?
Right. And it's hard, right? Because just like comedy, there are a lot of different segments of theater. You know, musical theater, experimental theater, you know, straight plays, but they're all attempting to create dynamic live performance. And that is just the question. Does this need to be live to work? And that is always the question if I'm directing something or seeing something. And in ways, comedy tends to be less expensive. You can usually bring booze in with you, and like the content is constantly being renewed.
Right.
So, for example, if we're going to do Hedda Gabler and Ibsen play, we still have to sit around and discuss why is this relevant for audiences? Why this play now? Where we go see sketch or improv. It was written probably a couple weeks ago.
Right.
It's relevant,
right?
You know, so there is that element too. That
and there's a difference because I try to go out to Chicago every couple years to see Second City, and Second City's treat it like a theater show. Like, it's actually like theater, not what we do at FIT, not what UCB does, or there's a whole different feel to it than what we do here in the city, at least at this point. Like, there's a respectability almost. Like, you know, like sketch comedy and improv are still at this level. You know, your experimental theaters are, you know, slightly above maybe, and then your, you know, standard plays and Walnut Street, whatever they're doing, or whatever else is a step above. But like, how do you bridge the gap between doing the sketch comedy, or what's the fulfillment difference between sketch comedy, Tribe of Fools, whatever other role you're going to take? Like, how do they, I used the term earlier, flex different muscles or create different senses of accomplishment for you?
Oh, cool. So improv, definitely the idea of something being ephemeral, right? So we create it and it immediately goes away. There's just excitement.
Yeah.
And like, I can play anything in improv. I don't have to worry about the costume, the props. I can create any world I want. I can be any character. So performing improv, and I perform with David Janella and Nick Gillette. It's called DGDK, and it's a live rock.
Yeah, I heard that was a really cool
it's
show.
Like, it makes me very happy as a player and as an improviser because I have really loud drums, and there's a lot of movement, and so that for me, and I'm making up characters and worlds, and it's very playful, so that hits a lot of my muscles. Tribe of Fools, and this is a lot of theater that I think comedy and theater can learn a lot from each other. I think theater, we work on a show for like 6 months, and we rehearse. Right now we're 5 days a week, 4 hours a night, and that is a lot of hours, but it shows in terms of the production value in the end, in terms of the rehearsal and the physicality. So that sort of like diligence and that focus on technique and having enough time to discuss technique and different options.
And you're doing a lot of shows like throughout the Fringe Festival. Yeah,
and you learn from each one. So there's something about that sort of like working on something for that long is really fulfilling, and you live in a character for that long is really fulfilling. But I love improv because I can play a bunch of different. So what I mean when the communities can learn from each other. Comedy is constantly renewing itself. We very rare will you see a sketch show done multiple times in a year, or revived, or so I love how comedy, it's so new all the time. Theater, is sometimes not new enough. So
Sure.
we work on something for too long without just putting it up and being fearless like comedians are. But theater, they work on things and they work on technique and they rehearse a lot. So it's interesting. Like, I think both communities have a lot that skills that they could definitely take, like the fearlessness of comedians and the some of the like the practice and the lots of rehearsal for theater practitioners. Not to say that comedians don't practice, but it's a different format. It's a completely different way of like how much rehearsal. No, comedians are like, let's put it up and see if it works.
Right.
Let's not keep it in like a little box for like 6 months.
Let's not be too precious about let's go for it.
But there's a lot of cool stuff that happens in that box.
Yeah.
So it's like back and forth. So being in both communities helps me with those two different muscles, which is really nice.
You had mentioned that your Manny Pedi castmate cohort, Caitlin Weigel, is writing the Tribe of Fools show that's going on in Fringe.
So cool.
So
Blending of worlds.
Tell me about this particular show.
It's called Fishtown, a hipster noir.
Okay.
And the name Fishtown, the play is set in Fishtown, but also it's a la Chinatown.
Okay.
Noir, which I love that movie. And a couple things that we knew we wanted to do. Tribe of Fools, the company members of Tribe of Fools are mostly men. I'm one of the first female company members and the only female company member right now. And we haven't had a female writer in many years, and we haven't had a female protagonist in many years. So we knew with this show that we wanted to prioritize, I would just say, the female creative voice. Just say that as a thing. And Caitlin, I was like, you need to read Caitlin's work. She's a sketch writer, but she's written plays. So she's a playwright as well, but she's super talented and she can write funny jokes. She can do this. And she auditioned and they were blown away with her writing audition. And so she's been writing the show, and we've been doing what we always do, where we take pages into the room and we improvise off of them. But this show is about a female detective that has sworn off technology. She has a flip phone. I play this detective. And there is a controversial app developer in Fishtown that has created an app that allows you to live out your wildest fantasies.
Okay.
Like it's a virtual reality sort of like module, and they're able to like pull your memories. So it's sort of a controversial app. And so she goes up against this company.
The first thing that I think about, I mean, you mentioned that it's a noir in the vein of Chinatown and, you know, other films like that. The first thing I think about with the female protagonist is that you have to at least be subverting the damsel in distress.
Yeah, the femme fatale.
Yeah,
sort of, yeah.
Like, you know, is it Faye Dunaway in Chinatown, or?
I think so. I'm not good. Obviously,
we'll say it's Faye Dunaway.
Don't even know my teacher's name. So
if I'm wrong, well, you'll just hear a random, some other actor's voice, like, bleeped in. Like, is that part of the appeal of this story? Like, to do it that, like, because I can't think of any female-led noir, like.
No.
At all, like, ever.
Yeah, so it's definitely to subvert that, yeah. We will present a lot of the tropes of noir and then flip them.
Okay.
So you'll see the lady in high heels, but she won't be who you think she is. So and Tribe of Fools loves doing that, and we've done that in other shows. So yeah, I think I'm really excited about it. The writing is really strong. I love saying Caitlin's words. They're always difficult to memorize because she messes with like alliteration and like it's so like poetically done. But to have a lead female and to have a woman writing the words that she's saying, I think is super important, especially because we're tackling and we've chosen a genre that is really male heavy. Right. So we need a female writer that's going to have that voice.
Chinatown, there's only 2 actresses.
Right.
If even 2, like.
But Tribe of Fools, even in the show, there's 3 men, 2 women. And that's just because, you know, there are men in the company, so you cast out of the company. But the Tribe of Fools they've tackled many important issues, but they've been primarily male-driven shows in terms of the characters that we care about and the emotional arcs that we follow. There's been women in the shows. There have been interesting female characters, but
just
we're
not
really
necessarily leads.
Yeah, we're really
protagonists.
And as we were originally, because the main theme of the show is how we connect with each other and in this technological world, and how it's sort of Black Mirror-esque. With this app developer, but it's really how do we, with all of these distractions, how do we actually connect? And so when we were looking at that theme, the initial cast list was like male detective, femme fatale, app developer's girlfriend, and we're like, no, like we need to be flipping these.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be,
and like why can't we? And this is a neo-noir, so it's like a new. And it's a hipster, so there's the hipster and all the Fishtown references. Like Caitlin lives in Fishtown, so definitely people who live in Fishtown, you'll laugh at all the specific restaurants and places we're referencing.
I ask everybody because Saturday Night Live is the biggest sketch comedy thing in America or world ever.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite Saturday Night Live cast member?
I mean, who's my fave right now? I'm always a Kristen Wiig fan. Also like the Amy Poehler days. But cast right now?
No.
To pick?
Ever.
All right. Well, I'll just say those right now.
Any specific, like, why?
Why?
Yeah.
I like Kristen Wiig because I like the characters that are wacky, that almost live in the world of grotesque characters, that are super exaggerated. Like I'm thinking of her, like Little Hands.
Denise.
I'm just thinking of that one, for example. So being able to perform and push in that direction is somewhere that I like to live comedically. And like the physical humor, not just verbal humor. So any performers that really like embody the character and use physical humor on stage is our cast members I'm going to gravitate towards. So.
What's something that you've learned from comedy since you've done it, like starting back from, you've done improv and sketches going back to college, real theater, movement, Del Arte and everything else. What's something that you've learned from comedy that you could either a life lesson like existential or just a practical tip for writing and performing, whatever floats for you?
A great quote that I always come back to is we laugh at what we recognize. So this idea of really trying to recreate real life, and just the fact of being specific and telling stories that connect to people. That is where the humor lives. And so moving away towards making, just in my performance, because I love jokes, but moving away from making these quick jokes and actually trying to play a real person on stage. And all improvisers are always like, yes, and. But I try so hard to be like a yes-ander in my life. And it's so hard. It's so hard not to be like, yes, but.
Right.
And I tried, and just the past couple years, especially just in terms of where I'm at, I've just tried to be more present in my life and listen more and less in my phone. And so the improv and comedy, being present, being in the moment with the audience, with another person on stage, and when I'm literally like going out to coffee with someone, just to be where I am and like see where I am, and be connected. So those are my biggest things I take away from comedy. But I think comedy is the art form that will outlive all the others. I truly believe that.
I think that's a pretty safe bet.
Yeah.
Like,
right. I mean, I that's
because I think for one, laughter's universal. Like, and it's much more easy. Like, there's so many shows on TV. Like, I haven't gone through Breaking Bad on Netflix because I feel like that's going to be like a chore at a certain point, like to go through this emotional thing. But I will rewatch Wet Hot American Summer or like something funny, like over and over again,
But the best emotional actors can also do comedy. So it's like the comedians. There's humor. It's like it's almost like they choose humor because they could easily do the dramatic stuff.
Like Bryan Cranston. Like
yeah, exactly.
He wins Emmys for Breaking Bad, but he was known as a comic actor before that. Like,
and it comes down to culturally, we need to consider comedy as an equal art form to theater. Because I went to this Italian school I went to, super fancy theater school. They're using the same terms that we use in comedy. Right. Same terms. Instead of calling it game, they call it theme. Instead of it's this, and same with theater. If it works, it works. If live performance works, it works. And it's the same techniques, the same elements. We just have different ways of talking about them. So
And why do you do it?
Why do I do it?
Yeah.
I love connecting with people. I love making them laugh. I love being on stage. And I love working on it. I love thinking about what makes people laugh. So I also I'm writing papers about comedy. I'm in grad school right now. So I'm also interested in comedy theory. So that's why I do it. I also teach it. And I would say that I love teaching it more than I love performing it, because I can really, the more connection I have with a student or performer, the more I can share it, the better. Right.
Wow. Okay. What are you writing in grad school? What's a paper that you've written in comedy theory?
Comedy theory? Recently I presented at a conference that was about Tribe of Fools actually prioritizing the female voice in this process. Mm-hmm. So interviewing different companies, why there are less women doing comedy theater, or less women that consider themselves comedic theater artists. Mm-hmm. So thinking about also just diversity. So I'd write a paper about that. And why am I the first female company member in a comedic? Right. So, and there's tons of articles like women in comedy, why women feel like they can't be funny, or there's not a lot of theater parts for women. And there's not as many theater parts for women, and very small comedic theater parts for women. Yeah. So if you come out and you're like, I'm a funny theater actor woman, you just hardly
there's not as
much. And women, there's tons more women in Philly comedy, which is amazing, but we're still in rooms with mostly men typically, some of the time. So it's also how women navigate. I'm interested in also organizationally how women navigate keeping their positions but also voicing their opinions in creative rooms. Mm-hmm. So I write papers about that. I'm also hoping to go to Bali in a couple years and study Balinese Taipei, which is a mask.
Bali?
Yeah.
Asia?
In Indonesia, yeah. I would love to go there in a couple years. I'm writing grant proposals right now. Every 2 years I lose my mind and leave the country. But so there's comedy in that, but no one's really, so there's comedy in a whole bunch of art forms, but because there's not, you can't go to college and major in comedy. A couple schools you can. Yeah. There are a couple of comedy studies programs, but because it is not an academic form, there's not a comedy journal per se.
Sure.
There are theater journals. So I'm actually trying to write comedy, similar how I write about theater, but I'm writing about comedy and Balinese mask drama, how they use comedy specifically. So I would write a paper about that.
How do you find out about Balinese mask drama? I'm so confused.
Honestly, I the people who you I read their bios. So if I do a workshop with someone who I read their bios. I see where they trained. And these are my peers too, where I'm oh, I love that you know how to do that. How do you know how to do that? Okay. And just getting people to discuss their training. But really, my teachers in Italy trained in Bali, and a lot of the mask work. We don't do a lot of mask work. I teach Red Nose Clown, which is a mask, but you don't really see a lot of full mask or half mask work in the United States. But so much of that tradition originated. Julie Taymor, who did The Lion King, we're talking about The Lion King, studied in Bali. Okay. So a lot of those masks and that tradition. So a lot of artists have gone to Bali. So it's not a novel idea.
So it's not as weird as I think it is.
But it is
I
still.
mean,
It is still.
It's not as out of the blue.
It is still out of the blue, but like in my like tiny community of like movement-based artists, it's like, oh, okay, yeah. But I'm constantly. The best advice I ever got was keep doing interesting things, and so I have to work all the not interesting jobs to do the interesting things, but I'm trying to be present and follow interesting things. That's my thing right now. And Bali seems like a cool ride.
The next interest, yeah.
Perhaps.
Hopefully.
Yeah, but this is what happens. I'm like in the comedy community and theater communities, which don't really intersect a lot, so I disappear from one when I'm in the other.
Yeah, they don't, and I understand partially why, but I don't understand.
It's a little bit of theater people with their noses up a little bit with like, but it's the same thing. I mean, comedians, people who don't see good theater, they're like, oh, theater is that boring show I had to see in like middle school.
Right.
You know, where it's like in theater, people are like, oh, comedy is that one bad comedy show I saw. So
Right,
we both like are both communities, and also time, right? You just don't have enough time in your week to be completely involved in both communities or to see. So I'm trying to mix the communities up, and I'm sympathetic. But the more we can treat comedy as a very important part of our culture and an important art form that needs to be written about, the more scholars can write about it, the more the more it's gonna, like I said, it's gonna outlive us all. Like
there's a joke in The Simpsons of like the film festival of the Jim Carrey Film Festival. Like it's one of those like future episodes, and you know there's like this. Now, granted, I think the episode came out like 95 or 96, so it was before like he got serious and did like that stint of Man on the Moon, Truman Show, Eternal Sunshine. He was just like the mask, like and everything.
Right.
But yeah, I think comedy should be studied. I like books about comedy.
Easy. There's more. I mean, but it is now. I mean, these training institutions are getting bigger and bigger, and more and more people are having the training. And I like that it's not just theater people or people that came out of performance training. It's accountants, it's lawyers, it's like everyone is getting this comedy training, and they have the skills to do what theater people are doing. So the training is more accessible for comedy as well, which is awesome. And I think both communities have a lot to learn from the other. But yeah, anyway, I'm just like, it's fun because I'm like, oh yeah, I'm back in the comedy community. People know me again. And then I'm like, bye, going to Bali, bye, going to Italy. But then I come back and I think I have interesting extra things to teach.
To come back with.
It certainly doesn't help with me like remaining, I don't know, relevant performer in this city. But
relevance can be a little.
Who cares?
Yeah.
Who cares?
All right. Thanks, Tara.
This was so great. We didn't even talk about this weird sketch. Or did we? Oh, yeah, we did.
Yeah,
we did. I don't even remember it. That's how.
It was 50 minutes ago.
Okay. Thank you. You're amazing.
Tara can be seen next as Tribe of Fools presents Fishtown, a hipster noir at the Louis Bluver Theater at the Drake. They're doing 14 shows throughout the month of September starting on the 8th, so there are plenty of chances for you to go. More specifics and the ticket information can be found at tribeoffools.org. Like I said up top, if you want to see me, sync or sketch at Fit's second stage on September 7th at 9 p.m. and monologues on September 14th at 9:30. Philly Sketchfest presents Philly Sketchfringe. 3 shows on September 15th at the Comedy Sports Theater. Tickets and more information can be found at myfirstsketch.com/sketchfringe. My First Sketch is a Philly Sketchfest production. You can find out more information at phillysketchfest.com or on Twitter at PHLSketchfest. Also, for more information about comedy in Philly, head to watercooler.com. The music on this episode is by the band No No, which you can check out at nonoband.bandcamp.com. Like My First Sketch on Facebook. This is Josh Hyam. Thanks for listening. Now go see some comedy.